This is Pam from Woodcamper Crafts, where all of my crochet patterns are inspired by nature. Today I'm going to teach you how to make the Bowen headband, named after Bowen Island in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. I love this headband because of the ribbing. It gives it beautiful texture. It almost looks more like knitting than crocheting. In this video I'm using a Stell chunky yarn. If you are substituting for another chunky yarn, just know that this isn't as thick as some. You will also need scissors, a darning needle, stitch markers, and a 5.5mm crochet hook. If you'd like a copy of the written pattern, I'll be posting it for free on my Woodcamper Crafts website. In this video, I'm using a lighter color of these Stell yarns so it's easier to see. We're going to start by creating a simple slip knot, and then insert your hook and pull tight. We're going to start this pattern by chaining 81. So yarn over and pull through. That's a chain 1, yarn over and pull through, chain 2, yarn over and pull through, chain 3. So you can work on this on your own. You're chaining 81, and I will meet you back here when you're all done. I've finished my chain. I have 81 in total, and now I'm ready to start row 1. I'm going to be working in the chain, but if you want a cleaner edge, flip the chain over and you see this back bump or horizontal loop. Work in the back bump. We're starting in the second chain from the hook or your second back bump, and we're doing a slip stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through all the loops to complete your slip stitch. We're just going to keep going. We're doing 15 in total. Insert your hook into the next chain, yarn over, and pull through all the loops to complete your slip stitch. So that's 2. Here's our third slip stitch. So you're doing 15 in total. I'll let you work on this on your own, and I'll meet you back here when you're all done. I've completed my 15 slip stitches. I'm going to grab a stitch marker and place it on that last slip stitch. And now I'm going to continue on. I'm going to be doing single crochets, and I'm going to be doing 50 in total. You can see I just came out of that loop. So working on my next loop here, I'm doing a single crochet. So yarn over and pull through. You have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through both loops to complete your single crochet. So you're just continuing on. You're doing single crochets. You're doing 50 in total. And I'll let you work on this on your own, and then I'll meet you back here when you're all done. So I've completed my 50 single crochets. And I'm going back to doing slip stitches now. We're going to do 15 in total. So insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through all the loops on your hook to complete your slip stitch. I'm going to pause here, and this is where I'm going to place my stitch marker. Just on that first slip stitch. And then I'm going to continue on here. Remember, you're doing 15 slip stitches in total. You can work on this on your own, and I will meet you at the end of the row. We've completed row 1, and we have 80 stitches in total. And at the end of every row, I'm going to chain 1 and turn. We're ready to start row 2. Row 2 is very similar to row 1. We're starting with 15 slip stitches, but we're going to be working in the front loop only. I'm just going to pause here and show you there's the slip stitch that we just completed. And if you're looking at it this way, you can see there's your front loop and your back loop, your front loop and your back loop, and your front loop and your back loop. I'm just going to insert this under the back loop, and what happens when you turn the work is that back loop becomes the front loop on the other side. So that's the front loop of your slip stitch, and that is the loop we're working under. It's easier if you look at from the top here. You can see there's your front loop, and there's your front loop, and there's your front loop. So I'm going to grab my crochet hook and we'll get started here. So once again, I'm doing 15 slip stitches working in the front loop only. So if you get confused, you can always look at the slip stitch from the other side. There's the back loop right there. So right here is the front loop. So insert your hook under the front loop only, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook to complete the slip stitch. So once again, under that front loop only, and we're doing the slip stitch. Yarn over and pull through all the loops to complete the slip stitch. So once again, find that front loop, and we're doing a slip stitch. Now that you know how to identify the front loop, I'll let you work on this on your own. You're doing 15 slip stitches in total, working in the front loop only. I'll meet you back here and we can do the last slip stitch together. So I've completed 14 slip stitches, and I know that I have one more left because it's identified by the stitch marker. So I'm going to take the stitch marker off, and then I'm going to insert my hook under that front loop only. Sometimes it can be a little hard to get in there. There we go. And we're doing a slip stitch. And I'm going to grab my stitch marker and I'm going to place it back on that 15th slip stitch. And I'm going to grab my crochet hook and just put it back on here. And now we're ready to keep going. So now we're doing 50 single crochets, but we're doing a modified version where we're working in that back bump or horizontal loop behind the stitch. So if we look at it from the front and we identify our front and back loop, there's our front loop and our back loop, our front loop and our back loop. We want that front and back loop to be visible. So there's the front and back loop. So instead of working in those loops, we're going to be working behind the stitch. So I'm going to turn it over here and just show you what I mean. So you can see that back bump or horizontal loop just behind the stitch. Just that single loop, that's what we're working in. So the single horizontal loop behind your stitch. So right there. So you can look at it from the front. We're not working in those loops because we want those loops to be visible. That's what creates the ribbing look. So once again, we're just working in that single loop, that horizontal loop behind the stitch. And you can see from the front, we're not working in that front and back loop. So all we're doing is single crochets, but we're working in that back horizontal loop instead of in the stitch. So there we go. There's our first single crochet working in that back horizontal loop or back bump. So find that single horizontal loop, and then we are just doing a single crochet. So if you look at it from the front, you can see we're not working in the front and back loop of the single crochet. You want that visible on the other side. So just a single crochet here, working in that back bump or horizontal loop. And we're going to keep going here. So you might have to give yourself a helping hand to get underneath that loop. There you go. And we're just doing a single crochet. So now that you know how to identify the placement of your hook, so just find that back bump or horizontal loop, and you're just working under that single horizontal loop. Sorry, this is really hard to do on camera, obviously. There we go. And you're just doing a single crochet. So now you know the placement of your hook. So it's a single crochet, it's just modified a little bit. And when you look on the other side, you can see it's creating this ribbed pattern because you're not working in that front and the back loop. So that's the ribbed look that we're going for. So make sure you're not working in that front and back loop. You're working in that single back bump or horizontal loop behind the stitch. So now that you know how to do this, I will let you work on this on your own, and you are doing 50 modified single crochets in total. So I've just completed my 50 modified single crochets. And if I flip it around here, you can see it creates this beautiful ribbed effect because you aren't working in that front and back loop. So now we are going to go back and finish the row. We are just doing 15 slip stitches working in that front loop only. So I'm going to take off my stitch marker and I'm going to start my slip stitches working in the front loop only. And here's my first one. Yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. And then I'm going to pause here a moment and place that stitch marker on that first slip stitch, my first of 15. And then I'm going to keep going. You're doing 15 slip stitches working in the front loop only. You know how to do this, so I will let you work on this on your own and I'll meet you at the end of the row. I'm at the end of the row, so I'm just going to chain one and turn. This is all you need to know to complete this pattern. I'm giving you the instructions for row 3 because it's a little different than row 1. In row 1, we were working in the chain instead of the stitch. So just remember, in every row, you're starting the row with 15 slip stitches working in the front loop only. And at the end of the row, you're doing 15 slip stitches also working in the front loop only. In the middle, you are alternating between a row of 50 single crochets and a row of 50 modified single crochets. I did 12 rows in total for the blue one, but you can make this as wide as you want. But your last row should always be a row of modified single crochets. You can work on this pattern on your own, and once you're all done, join me back here and I'll show you how to join the band together. And this is what it looks like when it's all done. The blue one I did 12 rows, and in this one I did 14. You can make it as wide as you want. At the end, if you did chain one, just pull that out. You don't need the chain one. And now we're going to seam it together. Before we seam it together, we need to cut a tail here nice and long so we have enough yarn to seam it together. Now I'm going to take the end of the yarn, pull it through my final loop, and then pull tight to knot. I'm now ready to join my band together. I'm going to start by lining up my ends, and you want to make sure that the wrong side is facing you. So just make sure that they're perfectly lined up here. If you want, you can use stitch markers to hold them in place while you sew it together. And now we're ready to sew. We're ready to join our ends using the mattress stitch. Insert your needle on the opposite side from the back to the front and pull through. And then pull it nice and tight. And then we're doing the same thing, but on the opposite side. Insert the needle from the back to the front on the opposite side and pull through. This is the mattress stitch. I like this because it creates a nice invisible seam. And we're just going to keep working, make sure it stays lined up there all the way along until we get to the end. And I'll let you work on this on your own, and I'll meet you back here when you're all done. We're all done joining our band, and the final step is weaving in our ends. So I'm just going to take my darning needle and work under 4 or 5 stitches in one direction. I'm just under 4 here, and I'm going to pull my needle through, and then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to work just a row below in the opposite direction, once again under 4 or 5 loops. So I'll let you weave in your ends and then you're all done. Thanks everyone for watching. I love sharing my crochet designs with you. It does really help me out if you like this video to hit that like button and let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to see more free crochet tutorials, you can also check out my channel.